So maybe this isn't the best weather to be outdoors plugging in hundreds of cables for our tunnel over there, or 30 to 40 cables for our snowmen. I'll have to find an indoor project today. So this is the back of our information signboard. As you can see, there's tape all around and plastic that keeps it sealed. So I'll have to take all that off and then start popping these screws out. And that'll be task number one. All right, well, I finally got all of the tape off so we could get to the back. So the plastic is off. You can see that there's just some wood against it that we're gonna have to screw it. It's just to provide a backing, and we'll see what the inside looks like once I'm able to rip it off. Sorry, take all the screws out, which is the next job. The power supply should be down here, but honestly, since we had to take it apart, we're also going to replace a couple cables inside, because been noticing that sometimes some of the panels don't light up to the right color, and you would think that's a bad panel, but I happen to notice that there's some, it could happen if you have bad wires. In this case, because the panels tend to do it when it's temperature dependent. Historically speaking, that's usually been more of the wires have gone bad rather than the panel itself, which is kind of odd. You can see here that a couple of years ago we had a tiny bit of water ingress when there was a crack in the plastic. So it really drives me nuts about this whole thing, as I had just replaced the plastic earlier this year. But anyway, so now the next job is to go in and take the back off. All right, so we got the back off, and you can see that it's not overly complex, but this also explains why this thing is so heavy. And this is the first one of these we ever built. The rest are not. So this here is basically 6 inches wide piece of wood. Every other one that we've done since then has been 4 inches or less. You can also see that the cross beam members are the same, so it's why it's super heavy, because this thing is massive in size, and measuring I think 8 feet across. I'd have to go, feels longer than that. I'll go measure in a minute. And but inside, I believe this is our primary culprit, which is, I think we blew up the power supply. You can see that it's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to have to pop these 4 screws off, and then there's 4 screws here that go into the power supply. We'll pop those off and swap it out with the new power supply, and then we're good to go. But inside, all you see here are just these pallets or panels. So here's 1, 2, 3 kind of stacked up. There's a plastic support pieces that goes across. You can see that's screwed into wood here. That's holding it up and against and even against the front. And then the whole rest of this is just wasted space that we really didn't need. We needed a little bit of it for our power supply, but honestly, I probably could have put in some thin Meanwell power supplies rather than this thick power supply. But even with the thick one, there was still plenty of room where this did not have to be mounted with so much space, but it does help with airflow. And so down over here, you can see the brains of the operation. And this is where we need to check to see if some of those cables are bad. But this particular one here is a BeagleBone Black, which also is getting its 5 volts of power from that same power supply. As well as you can see, these are power cables running to each one of the panels. These here are power supplies that run back to the power supply, and then from there it kind of splits off into becoming these individual pin connectors that goes to each. And the one extra thing on this side, you can see we have just a vent fan that helps suck hot air out of it. I'm sorry, actually this one pushes cool air in, my bad, and that can be unplugged if we need to. Again, plugs right into the 5 volts. And then we use the fan on the power supply. There's another vent for it to push its hot air out. Alright, so let's go ahead, not rip, but actually unscrew these bolts, or sorry, unscrew these, this wood, and then go ahead and pop the power supply off. Our basement is an absolute mess, as usual, but you can see that we got spare parts and also testing things set up. So this is where some of our testing equipment is set up, where I have different types of controllers kind of plugged into that switch. This is also small testing for our panels. So basically the information board that we're pairing is some of those panels that are there. So that particular one is 3 by 2, so 2 high and 3 wide, and those are same thing that are in our information board. And we also of course have stars and everything else in here, plus we have loads and loads of spare parts, including power supplies. Now, this particular one requires a 5-volt power supply, and don't worry, we have more than just the one. So there's a whole case of them sitting over in the corner, but it looks like I'm going to have to break into that case soon, because I'm down to just 2 spares sitting out here. And then lots and lots and lots of other spare parts here. And it's not all there, I mean, they're kind of piled up everywhere. And there's a bunch out in the garage because we've been repairing things out there. So we'll grab a power supply and also grab some of these extra cables here. So these are what I think have gone bad as well. And hopefully that'll fix it. And we'll show you what's inside. So the good news is this appears to be exactly what I expected. Plugged it in and no green light, so I just unplugged it. We will cut loose those wires right there so I can work, and we're just gonna unscrew this power supply and put in a replacement. I'm actually gonna just put it up to I'm actually first going to only put it into the wall and not actually connect everything, because a lot of times we find that these power supplies come hot from the vendor. So I'll get my voltmeter out and just measure how much voltage this thing is putting out before I actually connect it to anything sensitive. Alright, so I kind of forgot about this, but let's talk about overkill. And so if I come down here, yes, my drill is also overkill, I thought, but that is how long those screws are holding that in. So unnecessary. Alright, so we got this one powered into mains, and you can see the little green lights on. So it is working, and I have my multimeter over here, and I'm gonna do just a little check to see how much voltage is being put out. So be careful here. Hard to do. Alright, so I got the polarity reversed, but he's putting out 5.1. That's a little bit hot. So what I'm going to do is just use this little adjustment right here to turn it down so it's like 5.05 or something like that. And then that way, because we don't want to push the panels much more above 5. So make that quick adjustment, then wire everything back in, and have to move our board over which of course has a completely different configuration. I have to go get my hex set out in order to pop that off. So you gotta love this little project. It was like it put everything that we kind of had lying around to get it to work. I don't know. Anyway, so that'll be it, and then we'll, before we close it all up, we'll stand it up and we'll see if we're seeing any of the odd coloring from any of the panels, and if so, we'll look about replacing these ribbon cables and see how that works. Would prefer not to take off any of the panels because plastic is still connected in the front right there. So, all right. Well, we got some good news. So, just finished wiring her all up and turned her on. We got a green light. Got a fan rolling. Most importantly, brains of the operation seems to be powered up. Do have one little failure. Looks like this guy may have given up the ghost. Doesn't appear to be working anymore. So I'll go downstairs and see if I have a replacement 5-volt power fan put in there. And if so, I'll put that in before we go forward. It's cold enough. There's probably not a huge deal. But still always good to replace it if I can. Well, I do have a 5-volt fan, but it's too small. So I guess we'll forego replacing this and just order some new ones for next time we have to take it apart. But I tested, it was connected to the network, everything looks good. So now what we're going to do is put the power supply back in, and then we'll stand it up and we'll look to see if everything's lighting up with the right colors, and if not, then we'll look to see if some of these cables need to be replaced. Alright, so I got it flipped back up and powered on, and what we can see is that right in here, that strip right there sometimes lights and sometimes doesn't. And it's like right now you can see in this pattern it's being a little bit weird in that it kind of is slow to light, maybe is a better way to phrase it. So like when it, so there, it kind of slowly goes red, but it isn't consistent, and sometimes it works just fine. So I'm going to try replacing the data cable because it's super easy to do and don't have to take this front plastic off, which I would love to avoid, and we'll see if that works. Alright, ended up replacing one of those little cables. Of course, it had to be one right behind this, so it was this one way down there. It's for a guy with big hands, it's hard to get into. But let's walk around to the front and see if things are any better. And we no longer see those weird streaks happening. So there was another problem at the opposite end that would sometimes occur. So I'm going to try some different patterns and see if I can get it to show up down there so I know which one of those to replace. There we go. Looks like it's happening here. So let's try to replace this one too. So again, it was one behind the pallet or support, just not quite as far behind this time. So we will wait, and hopefully it doesn't happen again when we get to that section. Look at that. It's all purple now. So I'll let it run here for a few minutes before I close it back up. And I can't believe how lucky a day I'm having, because in my spare parts box at the very, very bottom for panels, I found one more 5-volt fan. So these really isn't supposed to be here, but awesome that it is, because the ones I just ordered from online won't be here for a little while. But this will be awesome. So I'll be able to repair that fan, plug it in, make sure that it works. And if it's all working, then hopefully this thing is good to go. Not sure how well that shows up on video, but look at that. That is a fan that is nice and spinning. I haven't seen any more failures. So this thing, which is 12 foot long, go ahead and we'll seal it back up by putting all the screws in for the backing, then bringing down all of that lovely plastic material and sealing it back up with some electrical duct tape. So that project should be, electrical duct tape, black duct tape. There we go. So this project should be all finished in about an hour. Alright, so with that, everything looks to be up and working again. And there's some flashing that's happening. That's because of the video not lining up. But trust me, it looks fine in person, and the flashing just because I got the wrong speed set on the camera. But looks good and ready to go.